for us the task is a drill with set parameters to achieve the goal. And the task is explained to the guest, like I said, with explaining to them the contribution, what their body movement, if they do certain things, how it will affect their skiing, and the demonstration has to be visible, the technicality accurate, appropriate speed, a clear demonstration, basically. Yeah? Is that good? And then the practice, so multiple attempts, the reflection, so again we connect with the guest and discuss what we want them to do, and we want to see if what they get back, what they tell us, the reflection of their exercises, is it what they actually did? So we discuss that and vary the task again and what we just said before. What is that? Yeah, so we're trying to create tasks that will show different learning abilities. So the seeing, the hearing, the moving, talk about it, explain, demonstrate, draw, how these type of things, yeah. Okay, and so to create an empowering and successful lesson, it has to be positive, relevant to what we see and what we want to develop, memorable, put some creative also task in there, not to, and they can, something creative, something new, that will give them some feeling of success, because the feeling of success will probably make them come back to, because they enjoyed it. And that's empowering the lesson, the student. And good.
So on the, I will start with you, maybe that time from the, I would say, methodology point of view. From the methodology point of view, define, customizable, constitutional, empowering. How do you set yourself in Finland on these for 3 items?
Especially, we like to always sort of play and incorporate on specific topics. So let's say that especially customizability is very important for us, because we have, well, 2 ways to go about it. But I could have said this a little bit earlier as well, but I like to think that it goes better into technical assessment and technical development, for especially that we have this triangle where we have in one end we have learner, but then we have the environment, and then we have the task. And what we teach our instructors is that you will never get out of stuff to do as long as you play with the task and the environment. And especially in context of Telemark, it's super important, at least for the customers in Telemark skiing that we get in Finland, that we play with those 2, because we might have very skilled, like skilled people within the motor functions, for example, that they have done some cross-country skiing, they've done some alpine skiing, they might be a little bit older, but they're skilled people. So that's when we can let go of the environment a little bit. We can go into, for example, more difficult environment immediately, but we start playing around with the task, and we try to customize and vary it as much as possible. That's the one way to do it, because how we say teaching sports in Finland in general is that you teach skills. You don't teach the sport, you teach the skills. And when there's like multiple ways to go around the skills and you teach all the skills, you can kind of combine it at some point. But also, when it comes to telemark skiing, we have that other way to go about it as well, that they always come to, they come and get more, you know, they want to get better at skiing. And they have a specific goal that I want to ski the red run, for example. I want to make proper telemark turns and lead changes, for example. And in those situations, they might not be so good in their motor functions, for example, and we have to play with the environment way more. And then we take a little bit more conservative way and a linear way in it as well, that we try to make it safe and secure in the beginning, teach them the basic stuff that it feels like telemark skiing in very easy environments. And we start playing with the environments to give the sensation that, okay, I'm actually proceeding in this. But also, as you might know with telemark skiing, it might be a very long process. So keeping it interesting with that task environment interaction, we play with that a lot, especially in telemark skiing. It might be a little bit different in alpine skiing because we have so much bigger audience for that, but in telemark skiing especially, we really play into that, especially in technical development.
And we in Canada are using task. You remember probably that we did that on the session, because I think it's a good way and a very fast way to communicate with participants too. We define the exercise you want, the radius, the speed, some other parameters, and then we start. You succeed, okay, short run. You don't have to explain another task, another that
Exactly.
takes some time. You move a lot, so we use the same wording in communication, so it's very easy when it comes to, okay, use the lift to discuss, to reflect, but when you're on the snow, change that parameter, single at a time. And it's very, very quick, very fast, so it's a powerful tool, I believe, in our methodology.
Definitely, and in history in Finland we relied heavily on drills, especially in telemark skiing. In alpine skiing we have gotten a little bit away from that we can see that, okay, as tasks, the task doesn't have to be something that they have to mechanically do, but more like they can work on different levels on it as well. So it can be like, for example, just mental images. They're trying to look for a feeling, for example, and so on. So that's something we've progressed in tasks very much, is that we don't see task as a specific task you have to do, but it's something that you have to aim for example. So yeah, it feels like we see very similar on this.
What about you, Jim? You want a high five now, or?
We're in technical assessment.
And
Technical development.
Yes.
Telemark has, in the United States, has 6 fundamentals that we divide things into. And
we'll get that to technique just after.
which part do you want right now?
Customizable, situational, empowering.
Oh, perfect. Is this the teaching part?
Yep.
Okay, let's go to that. We have fundamentals for that too.
Fundamentals for everyone.
Yeah.
Well, we have interesting things. So in the teaching portion of it, we have a thing called the Teaching Snow Sports Manual, and that brings up some stuff. And Greg introduced some of these pieces about just general models about assess students, determine and plan goals and experiences, create experiences for learning, all right, and guide practice. And that loop can continue throughout,
Yep.
right? And so some of this is education materials, and it doesn't seem, if you were to look at it, you'd have to overlay it to see it sort of in the assessment side of things. And within the assessment, there's, in the teaching side, there's 3 learning outcomes, which are each have 3 different assessment criteria. And those criteria are pretty broad and encompassing. You know, it's once again, you have to go to a performance guide and look for opportunities for how you would assess those things. Those 3, and you guys might have to help me out on this, those 3 things start with how you assess the student and plan the goal, plan the lesson. There's a presentation of information, which includes demonstrating, and then there's like a review or reflect and review section. All right, so in the lessons in the assessment process, the expectation that we would be able to determine that a person in the assessment process went through those 3 areas, and there would be 3 criteria within those areas, and they're not single word criteria, they're actually like 15 word criteria. You got any of them pulled up in front of you, Stuart?
Jim, I have some.
Just read one of them somewhere.
So, under the assessment plan category, where you're kind of preparing the event, it's a little blurry. Continually assess students' motivations, performances, and understanding. Actually, well, I was good till there. And then, oh, that'll work. Ooh, Jesus. And then, under the implementation, kind of the application of the activity, I'll just pick one. Under descriptions, demonstrations, and feedback, the criteria is provide clear and relevant information, descriptions, demonstrations, and feedback that encourage students' individualized learning. So basically modify your teaching so your student themselves gets something out of it. You know, each one of us might need a little bit of different take on the information.
So, you know, Keith is on the,
Yes,
he's on the task force, he's putting
Yeah.
this together, he's involved in that. So there's, in the teaching skills piece, right, and going back to the people skills piece, on the day, and sometimes it's in days or sections, but when when one is being assessed on their teaching skills, they're also being assessed on their people skills simultaneously. So we realize these things are not, you know, you can't just pull them apart, one and the other happen at different times. They very much overlap with each other. Right? But they're being assessed on those teaching skills, and there are 9 assessment criteria, which Keith just read 2 of them in 2 different sections. There's 9 assessment criteria, but we're being encouraged, if not pushed, right, to look at lessons and recognize that it's difficult to put a person in a situation, in an assessment, and evaluate their ability to teach, because it's a very, you know, it's a very mock situation. It's not something that's very real at that particular time. So one of the tasks from the examiner is to look at the lesson and decide, it's like, first of all, what do you believe? Do you believe that if this instructor delivered that lesson to these people, which they just delivered to a group of their peers who may or may not have needed that lesson, but if they delivered that, do you believe that that lesson would cause learning to occur? Do you think that the people in front of them would get better? All right? And if the overall impression of the assessor, the examiner, is, yeah, I think that would be a pretty good lesson, you should be able to go through the assessment criteria, all right, and see how those criteria would support your belief. If it seems like those criteria completely don't support your belief, you might want to question your belief a little bit. All right, but we don't start with just saying, we look at it from both a holistic and a parts or an analytical way. So we're trying to do that and not just say, because there's too many times it's like the little assessment pieces don't line up. But you still felt this was, boy, it sure looked like it was a pretty good lesson. They connected with people, I could see how the progression would work. This would get people better, but some of the numbers don't line up. Right, so we're trying to look at that from both perspectives.
You want to add something before we ask questions?
Yeah, well, when it comes to assessment, especially exams, so here in Finland we don't give grades at all anymore. Not in teaching skills, not on technical instruction either. It's more of a formative way of assessing these days. And we like to think that the people we have, especially on level 1 courses, is that we want to make them become a bit better instructors. We want to start a process of reflection for them where they can start bettering themselves as well, and especially like when they do the level 1 and they come for the Telemark module and become Telemark instructors as well. So in this context especially, we like to point out that what might be their weaknesses, what they need to practice on, and what they're better. But what we noticed when we were assessing teaching skills for our instructors was that we didn't really fail anyone after some point, because, well, it might be just some kind of hubris that we thought that we did good enough of a job. But what we expected them to do was something that we ended up getting as an outcome always, and having that kind of examination situation where we're assessing and giving a number to them, we didn't find that helping us or helping our instructors anymore that much. So for that reason, we decided that let's just focus on, you know, the areas of competence and lean on those a little bit more. Yeah, we're gonna let you know in 4 years how it went.
I have a question to you, just what you said earlier, not to Levi, about the autonomous, you know.
Oh yeah.
How do you define that in your teaching? How do you bring that out?
We define that in a way that it's not instructor-centric teaching, but it's a learner-centric teaching.
Okay.
And that the learner has a possibility to affect on how the lesson will go. That it isn't predetermined by the instructor. It's, for example, planning a lesson. We do not want the instructor to plan a lesson.
Yeah, it's like it's to our customizable
Exactly, it's a
situation.
customizability, exactly that.
Okay.
There needs to be a real interaction between the learner and the instructor, that they can decide together that what the path forward is going to be like.
The plan is good till you start.
Yeah. Exactly.
And then you throw it away. And so can we say that you work more on knowledge, to get knowledge for your guests to work by themselves and remember that, oh,
yes,
he told me to do this because of that, so he get the knowledge when he go back alone on the trail. And
exactly. It's about understanding what's happening, but also, especially if we have group lessons, so working in cooperation between the learner and the instructor, but also between the learners that might be in the group, and creating basically like input from there. So it would mean, for example, that we've done a demo, for example, on some technical thing that we're teaching, and after they have a basic understanding of the concept that they're supposed to do, we make them like start working on it. Because the Finnish belief system in learning is that immediately when you have a new concept that's being taught to you, you need to start doing it in cooperation with others. It's social constructivism. And what that means is that when you start implementing that by yourself, immediately you start understanding it a lot better. It's not about remembering it, it's about understanding it and feeling it like yourself as well. We use it as much in like sports instructing as well, in sports teaching. Yeah. So it's difficult to translate it inside my head in real time, but yes, I hope I get the idea forward.
Yeah, that's good. Any question from anyone in the room about that section?
Yeah, you know, we are kind of intellectualizing the teaching part a lot more than maybe did later, or what I feel like on the American and Canadian. I can see some problem already now. We have a little bit of discussion both in the Alpine and especially in the Telemark. You know, some teachers, especially young, new teachers, who's maybe not so good in school and in terms of learning a lot of list of intellectual stuff, but maybe brilliant teachers or instructors.
Yeah.
You know, how, I could understand the Finnish, that's what you kind of said. You are not, you know, you are, it's more on practical matters that you are, but what about in Canada, in the States? How do you get around this? Is that a problem at all? Or?
There's certainly some people that feel that it's a problem.
Yeah.
You know, what I would say is that if it's younger people, like you say, who maybe had challenges in more formal schooling situations, we certainly have courses of study and so on, but the assessment process itself, we do have, and this isn't consistent from region to region, but there are written exams, but I wouldn't say that they're particularly difficult. I've never heard of anybody who couldn't get through that part of it. sometimes not on the first try, but they can do it as many times as they want, you know. But then on the other part, you know, engaging with the written materials is one way, but it doesn't have to happen that way.
Okay.
The assessment process is 100% practical.
Okay.
In other words, it's all on snow in front of an assessor. So you can practice your teaching by teaching lessons, and you can practice your teaching in clinics, you know, with myself or Stuart or whatever, you know, and go out and we do clinics to help people become better at those things. So they don't have to be book smart to get through
Okay.
this. You know, that's just one piece of information that they can connect with. But they can also learn it in whatever way works best for them. But we do require that. I mean, we have standards that say you have to be able to accomplish these things as an instructor or as a teacher.
Oh yeah, where are we? Guest-centered approach. Well,
Summary.
yeah, so it focuses on the needs of the guests and the goals, and creating a positive skiing experience, so they want to come back. That's the goal. Okay, I guess, so, what is this? Is this that's the summary?
Sorry, yeah.
We did the technical development. So we connect, basically the summary, we connect with the guests, create a relationship, positive relationship, make them feel empowered and successful. In order to do that, we create a learning environment, or decide on a learning environment that will give them these empowering and feeling of success. We assess the students' skiing. The whole thing basically is an ongoing method. And we don't just say we do this, 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 and this, but we, every step, every development, every task we give, we always reassess the environment, the connection, we reassess their skill levels, we adapt, so it's an ongoing going thing, and keep those components of success, empowering, always in our mind, and as we're going through this methodology. Yeah, and the technical development, developing the skills and stuff, that is an ongoing thing. And that's that.
So let's go to technique.
The technique. Okay. So when we go to the technical development part, as we assess our student, we have some tools we are using as instructors, and we call them technical references. They're basically, we crunch them together into three references that we call balance, direction, change, and coordination. Within these three references, we have different skills that we use, or that we have to have and develop to create the outcome of balance, direction, change, and coordination. So, so that's our framework of skiing. And now I used my words, but here it's written in a better way, more technical. Yeah, those are our tools we use to assess the students' skiing well. So for us, these are the definitions of balance. It's a dynamic process requiring the use of all joints and the muscular system to manage forces acting on the ski and the skier. The direction change is driven by body movement, pressure management, edge, angle, speed, and equipment to determine the size, speed, and level of ski performance on the arc. So basically direction change is different skills together, like we call it rotation, or we used to call it pivoting and all this stuff, and we put it all together into the direction change. So when we see people ski, we will decide what part maybe we want to develop, and within balance, like I did in my class, the balance first, and then we go through different skills that we need to create a better balance or a better direction change or a better coordination, which is for us, the coordination is properly sequenced movement to achieve rhythm and efficiency. Yeah, here you go. So I was talking about movement outcomes. So within the technical reference, key principles and actions that we call movement outcomes. These movement outcomes describe what skiers should be doing, what they should look like, and how they should move to achieve proper, efficient, and powerful skiing. These movement outcomes are necessary in every maneuver in Telemark, on all terrain, and at all levels of ability. Instructors can target these precise movements to assess and develop skiers.
Hey, can I ask
Yeah.
a question? So you talk about movement outcomes. Do you direct them in any way in the movement of the body or the movement of the skis? Because I know that CSIA, for example, has
Yeah.
that. How do you guys see it?
Yeah, the movement of the body. So
Yeah.
whatever the movement of the body will affect an outcome.
Yeah,
Is that?
the outcome being the skis.
Yeah, the skis, what happens.
Yeah, the skis, no interaction.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Great.
So we start from
The body.
bottom up.
Yeah, exactly.
On the assessment, look at the ski, what they're doing,
Yeah,
track, the edging, the parallelism, and all that stuff. And then we identify what body movement needs to be improved to
Yeah.
improve the skiing.
yeah, thank you.
Is that it? Oh. So, movement outcome, I mean, there's lots written here, so movement outcome. But I'm better on snow than in class, but
I can
We
get
can-
you some snow if you want.
it's easier to show. But it's basically what the body does and what it looks like. Here with the balance, we just, that was the definition of balance.
Yeah.
And so what it does for the balance and what we're looking at is the alignment, body alignment, center of mass over base of support, and depending on the radius, the speed, and this will need to be adjusted. So that was the alignment, and then the third skiers move their balance from one ski to the other while linking turns. In the transition between turns, the skis are flattened, aligning this center of mass over the base of support. So those are the outcomes. Those are the what we are looking for, what we are basically trying to get the student to do. And the same with direction change, not the same, but it's the same idea. Its direction change is the interaction of ski on snow. That will determine the parameters for change of directions. The skis are turned by rotation of the legs, the lower body in the hip socket, separating upper and lower body. And to react to the increasing forces throughout the turn, the skier achieves balance against the outside ski by, that's hip flexion and head abduction, that's angulation, inclination, angulation. So those are the things we would work on, or what we need to work on for direction change outcome. Is that good? And then the coordination. Coordination is the sequence of movements to achieve rhythm and efficiency. That's decision making, adapting to speed, and the skier will time and execute movements in specific sequences. So we change the shape and turn, and in order to do that, we have to change our rhythm, the body movements quicker. All these things are part of the coordination. Yeah.
So on the technique side, what you two guys, what we don't want to have now is your 128 pages talking about techniques in your manual. But just to share what you have, we define, in fact, if I look at the USA, you have fundamentals. And you're talking, by example, about balance. I take in 3 of those or 2 of those. We combine that into a single one. Balance cover, half for lateral and rotational. So is there anything that you see in there that's common, or you don't see that we should have in our what we call our technical reference? This is the tool we use to evaluate skiers. They come to us, we look at balance, coordination, direction change. So what do you, I'll start with you, Edwin.
Well, in Telemark we have, it's broken into 6 fundamentals. And this is actually one of the most interesting things I learned at Interski going back to, 8 years ago in Ushuaia. It's just how different countries wrote their way in which they technically look at skiing in different ways, and none of them ever seemed like they were wrong to me, because when you come in first you think, well, we do it this way, this must be the only way to do it, how could it be any other way? Well, it can be other ways, and it works pretty well too for other people. So, but anyway, so we have chosen these 6 things. Those 6 things are specifically, just to give you a general overview, the lead change piece.
Is it the organizing committee or?
Lead change, the ability to rotate the skis, the ability to tip the skis, the ability to manage the pressure over the skis, front to back and side to side, those are 2 different ones, and the ability to manage the total amount of pressure on the skis. And we have both fundamentals and possibly a skills concept also, which just breaks it into pressure control, lead change, rotational control, and edging control. What we don't say in our technical pieces is that as instructors go through and become better at it, we have very little that defines the way in which they will do it. In other words, it says control the edge angle through a combination of angulation and inclination. It's like, well, which one should they practice? It's like, well, which one's going to work for the situation that you're in right now? Right? And so we don't define that. Like in the Telemark side, the Alpine side talks about the rotation of the legs separate from the upper body. We talk about it in conjunction with discipline in the upper body. Right? And we chose to make that different from Alpine because we said, well, we're not going to eliminate the fact that the upper body can turn. But if you're going to have the upper body rotate along with your skis, or even before your skis, as you might, for instance, if you go in the air and you want to spin a 3, all right, then it should result in an